Well, hi Tom, what do you want to know?
Oh God, I suppose you could talk to me about your time as working in Games Workshop retail, kind of.
Crikey, that was a long time ago now, but I'm going to throw my mind back a long time ago when I was.
Yeah, when did you start?
Well, I would have been 25 and I'm now 64, so a long time ago. But yeah, I joined Games Workshop and I worked in trade sales for a long time. First of all, in mail order for a long time, under the great tutelage of Mr. Rick Priestley, who taught me everything I know. And then in the trade sales department, opening up Ma and Pa stores all around Britain. And that was great fun. I learnt a lot there as well. And then Brian Ansell, the great dark-winged avenging lord of chaos, called me into his office and said, would you like to be head of retail? So in a blind panic, I said, well, no. I said, I've never worked on a store in my life. And he said, well, it's quite easy. There's nothing to it. And I said, well, no, I don't think I'd like that. He said, well, you could open up lots of stores. I said, yeah, but you fire all the heads of retail. He just gave me his Brian Ansell grin and said, well, I wouldn't fire you. I said, well, you might. And so I had to go and sleep on it and then think whether I really did fancy being head of retail for Games Workshop. At the time, they probably had 10, 12 stores. They were in Leeds and York and Manchester, Dowling Road, of course, famously, Glasgow and Edinburgh, Bristol, as I remember. So that's a few of them anyway. But then they were what you call classically proper game stores, in that you could buy Trivial Pursuits in there. Sure. Citadel Miniatures, yes. Games Workshop products, yes. Dungeons and Dragons, for sure. But then really weird stuff like water pistols and kites and Yahtzee and chess, Go, even including Ouija boards, for God's sake.
Jesus.
Not a thing you really want to take home to your mum and dad. So it was this really weird eclectic mix of just weird stuff. So that's what we had to work with. So what Brian wanted, obviously, is for us to sell more Games Workshop stuff, because the margins you make on that are so much better, because we're making it ourselves, you make more profit. Bringing stuff over from America, things like RuneQuest, TSR, or Bunnies and Burrows, for God's sake, the margins are quite slim on that. So we had to get the stores up and becoming like what now looks like Games Workshop shops. So that's where I stepped in, and that was what I had to do as a job. So the first thing we had to do was get all the store managers aligned, and so I had to move a couple of those guys on who didn't particularly want to run the stores in a new way.
Yeah, sure.
So
there would have been different mindsets.
It was a bit of a chat. I mean, there's one of them who insisted on sitting in a large leather armchair behind the counter. He just wouldn't get out of the armchair. I said, no, you can't sit in a chair all day. He said, well, I think you'll find I'm going to. I had to say, well, I think you'll find you're not going to.
Yeah.
So that was a free and frank discussion.
Yeah, sure.
So I had to change the look and the feel of the shops. Now, one of the things that we did was we had a very important meeting with all our managers, and I got them all to a pub in Nottinghamshire, and the Shipley Boat pub it was. I got them all together and I said, look guys, we're going to do something really radical, and we're going to turn these stores, these Games Workshop shops, into proper Games Workshop shops. And the premise is that we just sell Games Workshop products. And they said, oh yeah, okay. I said, no, I mean literally just Games Workshop. No Dungeons and Dragons, no Bunnies and Burrows, no RuneQuest, nothing, certainly no Ouija board sets or like that. It's just going to be Citadel Miniatures and Games Workshop. So do you think you could do that? And to a man, they all stepped up and said, yeah. I said, well, okay, this is a huge ask. Yeah, we're doing it. So spearheaded by our Newcastle store manager, Ian, who's a great little Geordie lad, he basically put up more and more wall racks and had a good 8-metre long wall of Citadel miniatures. And so he quadrupled the amount of Citadel we were carrying. And just over 3 weekends, he showed us how much more he could sell. And it was like a feeding frenzy. People were driving for miles to come to the store because people were not we never put out the whole range, which sounds mad now, but there were so many models we couldn't fit them into the store because there are things like kites and chess sets there, so we couldn't fit them all in there. They were in little drawers, so people couldn't see them. So Ian Hensel, his name was, he kind of led the charge, and we started developing what became the Games Workshop retail chain and the feel of it. Now, the one thing, well, there are many great things about Brian Ansell, but if he asked you to do something, he would give you his full support.
Sure.
So he'd make sure that White Dwarf would bang the drums about the stores and really talk and do a store profile. He'd make sure that the shop fits would happen on time, and he backed you all the way, which was really good, a very useful boss to have.
So he had that vision and trusted people to see it through, kind of thing.
Yes, it's often Brian's vision. So much of Games Workshop was at the time.
Sure.
I wouldn't say it was a one-man band, but Brian was certainly the mover and shaker. So the first thing we did was to get some gaming tables in. Now, nowadays it's fairly obvious if you've got a gaming shop that you'd have gaming tables in them, but it wasn't then. Nobody did, and so I sort of thought, I spoke to Brian, he said, "Hey, I think we should have a gaming table in there." So we bought a number of table tennis tables because it was cheap. And my mate Chris, his mum, made some black cloth to go over them to reach down to disguise the fact they were table tennis tables, really. And we put these table tennis tables into those stores and started running games of Warhammer. This is pre-40k.
Yeah, sure.
And what it did, of course, it provided excitement in the store, reasons for people to go there, and it showcased gaming at its best. When people used to walk in and they'd see, there would be a figure cabinet with the occasional dragon here and there and things like that, but it didn't show the armies being played, the excitement that was Warhammer.
Yeah.
So, but getting a bunch of guys in and rolling dice and whooping and cheering and shouting and abusing each other, suddenly it became an activity centre, and it really transformed the stores. And then, of course, if you're going to have a gaming table there, the next stage was to get a painting table. So we installed a painting table so people could come in at their lunch hours or after school or after college or after work and while away an hour or two just figure painting, and we'd let them use the store's paints and things. Yeah. And that's how all the tutorage came. That's how we were able to form this, at the time, extraordinary bond between our customers and our staff.
It was like a sense of community.
Oh, it's exactly. We built that sense of community, and people wanted to hang out in the Games Workshop store, and they wanted to be part of Games Workshop, and we wanted them to do it too. So we only then hired people who could play Warhammer or could paint properly, and we could show these young lads. I mean, commonly 14-year-old boys would come in and we'd show them how to paint a model, and they'd say, I could never paint that. And patiently the manager would take him through it, say, well, look, here's what I painted mostly. Why don't you just paint the sword and we'll base it. And the kid would do that. And then he'd feel so proud, take that home to his mum and dad, because we'd give him the model to take away because it wouldn't cost us much. And he'd be in next week buying models because his confidence level had built up. So the stores, the most important thing about the stores, and still is at Wonderful Games Workshop, is the store manager and all the staff. They have to be a blend of clearly a businessman, a shopkeeper, but they're also a policeman, a tutor, a teacher, and to be the elder brother that you wish you had, not the one you got. Because they would ever so patiently, 5 days a week, go through painting Space Marines, how you have to paint them. That's really cool, they'd say, but you need to base it. Kids know when they're being patronised, because that happens at school all the time. Oh, well done, Johnny, that looks great. Yeah. Well, our store managers would say, that looks good, but it'd be better if you put these transfers on. Now, doesn't that look better? And the kid goes, oh, yeah, it does. It looks great now, and I've done that. So that sense of achievement they were getting was wonderful. And that led to a big bond, of course, also between the parents and our staff, because the parents would know that you're looking after generally a son or daughter. It's trustworthy, a good place to go. Yeah, there are a few long-haired people there, but the Games Workshop staff, they were unfailingly polite and nice, and if they didn't, we'd be brutal with them and get rid of them, discard them. And we got this lovely bunch of guys who just enjoyed sharing their hobby with everybody else, and that built this fantastic community in the stores. This great loyalty, which which you'd seen every year when we would have games day at Birmingham, at the arena in Birmingham, and I don't know, 20,000 people would suddenly disgorge from all these coaches, all carrying banners. You know, the Newcastle coach, 50 Geordies coming down, and Liverpool coach, and the Swansea coach, and all arriving, often dressed up, but always carrying banners, to have this wonderful day out. And that was how powerful the retail chain was. And you'll notice that over the years, over 50 years now, Games Workshop has never advertised. They've never had a paid advert that I know of, because White Dwarf magazine was a lot of their marketing spend in WH Smith's, in the newsagents. But the second thing it was the stores. By growing the store chain to, well, in the end about 140, whatever it is in England, when I was there, they were the advertising, because in every county, town or city, at some stage, a mum or dad or a kid are going to walk past a Games Workshop and say, what's this then? And those big open windows we would always have, and we'd pay for the lights to be on in the cabinet all night, so when people come back from the pub, they could look in. That was all deliberately done, so you see them standing around at 11:30 at night, looking at the dragons on the Friar Lane one in Nottingham. Oh, that looks great, you know. And it's all about building that excitement. And so that was my role as head of retail. I had my lieutenant was a chap called Tony Cottrell, who's still at Games Workshop, running. Well, he's run Forge World and everything, and he was quite magnificent in doing all that. We had one logistics man called John, we thought was an elderly man then. Of course he wasn't, but he seemed a lot older than we were, and he was very good at doing the detail side. And then we had a chap who's passed away, unfortunately, a chap called Tim Wilson, who used to go and open the stores for us and sleep in them if necessary, to get them open in time. Opening the stores, none of us had ever really done it before. We just made it all up. And Brian left us to it, and I said to Tony, well, Tony, where do we open all these stores? And we thought, well, let's look at the football clubs we know. And it really was. We said, well, Man United, I've heard of them. Yeah, they'll be good. Ipswich, yeah, they're not so good. Perhaps we'll do that later. And we just went fill the gaps that there were by looking at the League Division 1 in those days. So we could pick another 12 towns, and then we'd look at League Division 2 and go all the way down. That's how we did it. And then we got a little more sophisticated, because we suddenly realised, well, if there's a Marks and Spencer's in town, that's probably a good place to go.
Sure.
Very middle class, and and
a bit of money to the town.
And then when we got really sophisticated, we looked for where there was an early learning centre. I don't think they're in business anymore, but that was for posh families, for so-called clever kids. And they were exactly the same size as a Games Workshop store, 700 square foot. And if a town had an early learning centre, that meant they'd had proper property people looking at the sites where it should be, where you should park, where you could go, and where the rents are affordable, etc., etc. So in the end, we just followed wherever they went, and it did all our work for us. So
wow, yeah.
Really quite simple. Why reinvent the wheel?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
And that worked very well for us. And then in the end, we just kept refining it, and we thought, what's the smallest town we could be in, and run a successful store. And one of the smallest was Worcester, which is my old hometown, and we opened up a store in Worcester, and the rent was £4,000. I'm thinking, but it would take £100,000 a year, and so we'd make money.
Sure.
And so we were experimenting all the time with what we could do. And the shop fit was always cheap as chips. If you spent more than £15,000, you were being unnecessarily fancy. Sure. So and we had so many shop fitters coming to us to say, "Oh, I envisage doing your stores. I can see them half a castle." I go, "Yeah, and half a spaceship." You're going to say, "Yes, that's right." So no, we're not interested in that. We just want a box, a till, a gaming table, and a painting table. That's what we want, and good staff. So we wouldn't waste money on shop fits, because again, we had people like John Blanche doing this amazing artwork for Warhammer. So we'd use artwork, or in fact just the product quite often, and that's how we'd get the stores open.
I think the shops at the time had a distinctive red look to them, didn't they? That was
They had red. It's Sun Dealer Panelling, it was called. I think that was the brand name, but it's lots of red around the top. Sun Dealer Panelling. It was cheap as well. That's why we did it. Yeah. Just red felt, sure. But just filled a lot of space and added colour. And so that's how they all came about.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about expanding the business and kind of outside the United Kingdom?
Yeah, well, as you know, there are probably over 700 Games Workshop stores around the world now. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, there's 500 in the UK, I think, isn't there?
Not 500. I don't think so.
Well, I might just thinking of 500 globally. I remember a couple of years ago they had
many hundreds. So in the 700s, I think it is now, and a load of independent stores either. But yeah, we filled the UK quite nicely, and then Games Workshop had subsidiaries in Spain and France and Germany and Australia, and they started opening up their own ones, and they broadly did the same thing. They didn't need to reinvent the wheel. Each of the countries would have a flagship store, which they were particularly proud of. There's one in Paris, for instance, which was always running neck and neck with our Oxford Street store.
Sure.
And then one year they pipped the Oxford Street store. I remember how pleased the French were and how annoyed the Oxford Street lads were. But yeah, and there's a lot of money to be made in the stores, actually. It's quite amazing with just one product, really, just Games Workshop, that's all they sell.
Yeah. Do you have any memories of Warhammer World being developed?
Yeah, Warhammer World, again, was Tony Cotterell's vision. Tony, and perhaps a little bit of Robin Dews, but it's Tony who did all the hard work on it. And again, it looked like an enormous hole. I think, well, can we fill that? And it didn't take long to fill it. If you go to Warhammer World now, it's an absolute...
It's a day out.
It's a treat to go out. Yeah. It is a treat. They've got a proper castle there, better than Nottingham Castle. Massive gaming areas, massive shop, and this wonderful museum full of dioramas, which you can absolutely have a lovely day out there, and I suggest you do. And then come and see Warlord Games afterwards. We're only 300 yards away.
Yeah, just over the road.
Just over the road. Come and see us if you've got any money left. But yeah, that was Tony's concept, and for years we kept asking the Nottingham City Council for the brown signage that they put for museums and things like that, and they kept saying, well, no, you're just a shop really. And we said, mate, you don't understand how many people visit this place.
Yeah.
And Robin Dews, the White Dwarf editor, he even got the Nottingham Museum, which is at the castle, to do a Games Workshop art month. And so for a month we hung all the Games Workshop artwork in the museum. And it was the biggest exhibition they've ever had.
Yeah, sure.
They had, I kid you not, 40,000 visitors came to see it.
Wow.
And they were just blown away.
Yeah.
Because people had no idea the power of Warhammer. and that was a great success. Long live the Games Workshop retail chain.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel you achieved everything like you set out to do, like at the time?
Yes, it's the proudest thing of my life.
Yeah, sure.
Was opening up the Games Workshop retail chain. I had help and direction, but it was what we got was a great feeling of spirit in the retail chain.
Sure.
Of the managers and the shop assistants that were pulling to a common goal. And so we had the red uniform, read all this, and we did a famous codex of how to behave in your store, which we all contributed to, about how to behave with customers and with integrity and all this good stuff. And they were very happy days, and I still count a lot of those store managers as friends. And occasionally the accountants at Games Workshop would say, John, we're really worried about our accounting procedures. And I say, well, how do you mean? I said, well, stock might be going missing. And I said, yeah, it might. And they'd say, well, what are your procedures? I said, well, getting good and honest staff are my procedures to stop that.
Yeah, sure.
And I said, they also get a 50% discount rate, so they don't need to steal. And they're very honest and great people, hard-working people there. Yeah. Doing the same thing every day is hard work.
Just going back to what you were saying about the community, that's something I can attest to myself as a 8-9-year-old kid. I remember going into Games Workshop in Oxford.
Oh yeah.
And having a Bretonian monopose archer.
Yes.
Kind of painting some green on it and putting some grass flock in it.
That would probably be Andy Wheel in those days, our manager. He's a very nice man.
But that
sense of achievement, isn't it?
That experience is something that's lived with me ever since, and I remember taking that model home with me. Unfortunately, it's lost to time now, but it was something I treasured for such a long time. Even when I kind of left the hobby, I remember having it in a drawer and, oh yeah, I remember that. And, here I am now years later, diving back into the hobby.
Yes, well, you've achieved something.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a great sense of achievement. And I mean, the other thing is trying to get young men to read is almost impossible, as we know, and it was so in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
But suddenly they're devouring rule books with rules like, maneuverability. They're big words for young lads, and they're destroying these books. And mums and dads say, he's never read a blooming book in his life, and he wants another one. I think, well, there you go. You see, and good for your education.
Yeah.